Imagine this. You're past 60, your son is about to marry, and everything seems flawless. Then you discover the in-laws are none other than your first love, who left you 40 years ago. What would you do? A wedding that should be nothing but flowers and candlelight suddenly hides a secret that could tear it apart. To speak is to risk your son's happiness. To stay silent is to carry an old wound forever. It is not an easy choice, and it is the path the character in today's story must walk. A story not just about love, but also about courage, sacrifice, and the way the past sometimes arrives at the very moment we least expect it. A fine mist in Portland clung to the kitchen window like chalk dust that morning. I switched on the kettle as the slow drip of coffee filled an old porcelain mug stamped with Best Mom 1997. I was about to water the herbs on the porch, mint thriving like a weed, thyme sulking in the corner, when I heard the FedEx truck stop short in front of the house. "Delivery for Mrs. Ellison," the young man called from the porch. I wiped my hands on my apron, stepped out, signed the electronic pad, and took a thick cream-colored envelope tied with a velvet ribbon the shade of red wine. Just from the ribbon I already knew. A wedding invitation. My heart gave a quick jolt, joy and a hollow pang like a fresh dug hole in the yard. My son Daniel was getting married. I set the envelope on the maple table beside a tray of warm waffles, drew a deep breath and tugged the ribbon free. Inside was a set of embossed invitations, heavy paper with the scent of ink and dried lavender. Emily always had good taste. I read the graceful script. Daniel Ellison and Emily Harrison. I reread it slowly as though my eyes were playing tricks. Harrison. The word rolled across my tongue like a cold pebble, striking a place in my chest I thought had long grown moss. Harrison. I sank into the chair that usually creaked whenever I shifted, now suddenly silent. Outside, the rain thickened a little, as if the sky too had hesitated. My gaze dropped to the smaller print. Parents of the bride. Richard Harrison, and I didn't need to read further. That was enough to make the morning smell of the past. Rick. His name surfaced like a peppermint lozenge I had once tucked into the pocket of a winter coat at 18, its wrapper suddenly snapping open after decades. I stood and poured more coffee, my hand trembling so that a few drops splashed on the mug's rim. "Calm down, Maggie," I murmured to myself, how I used to soothe the children when I taught school. And sometimes I thought of Tom, my husband. If he were still alive, he would probably chuckle and tell me not to make a mountain out of it. He's been gone 10 years now. Yet in this kitchen I keep the Best Mom mug he gave me in '97. A reminder I'm never truly alone. I picked up my phone and texted Daniel. "The invitations just arrived. Beautiful. Call me tonight if you can. Sweet Emily, so kind. The first time she came over, she helped me wash the dishes, asked for my apple pie recipe, and admired the scent of the golden chrysanthemums I always keep on the dining table. I liked her. I liked her before I knew her last name." I looked at it again and fragments of memory drifted like yellow leaves between the invitation's pages. A high school football field in Illinois, the blazing June sun, the pungent smell of freshly cut grass, Rick's laughter as he let go of my hand saying, "I'll be back before the new moon." We had packed our whole future into a shoebox filled with letters and grainy snapshots, a box I carried into adulthood in America, then tucked high in the closet beside my mother's knitted scarves. The phone buzzed. Daniel on FaceTime, his brown hair still messy the way it was when he was 10 and came in from a snowball fight. "Did you see the invitation?" She picked out the paper herself. I only chose the ribbon color. "So what do you think?" My son's words tumbled fast, his eyes shining like when he landed his first job. "It's wonderful," I told him, and I meant it. "She has a great eye." "It's just," I paused, the words heavy as stones on my tongue. "Her last name." Daniel hesitated for half a beat, as though he saw that pebble land between us on the table. "Ah, you noticed. Portland's a small world. But don't worry, Mom, everything's fine." I smiled, trying to make it warm. "I'm just surprised, that's all. I'm not, I'm happy for the two of you." My voice sounded as if it were drifting away, the way the Willamette slips beneath the bridges in the rain, gentle but cold. "Emily's parents would like to have dinner with us next week," Daniel said. "Just a meal to discuss a few details before the engagement." "I don't want you to worry, Mom." That little phrase, "don't worry," always made me feel both mother and child at once, as though I were the one in need of soothing. "All right. I'll cook," I replied. Roast chicken. And apple pie. I didn't say that whenever something important loomed in our family, I always returned to those two dishes. Perhaps because the kitchen was the only place I trusted to get things right. After the call, I stood at the kitchen window, watching the rain tap its steady rhythm. In the sink, plates soaking in soapy water glistened like fish scales. I thought of Rick, of the name itself, which carried a train of scents the moment I let it pass through my mind. Gasoline from his old pickup, buttered popcorn at the drive-in, the faint musk of his faded plaid shirt. I had not spoken that name aloud in years, as if it were a taboo I had written. Around noon, Candace dropped by, carrying a basket of sourdough from her favorite shop on Northeast Alberta. My sister had the habit of knocking twice and letting herself in, like our mother used to say, "Doors open, good folks come in." "Wedding invitation yet?" she asked, her eyes lighting like a child waiting for Christmas gifts. I handed it to her. She read, her brows lifting, then pressed her lips together as she glanced at me. "Harrison," she whispered, as if the walls might overhear. "Yes." I set the kettle on the stove, struck a flame, and let the hiss of gas fill the silence between us. Candace's hand touched mine, warm, firm. "Are you all right, Maggie?" "I'm managing," I answered truthfully. At 62, managing is a kind of peace. The certainty you'll get through without knowing how. Dinner next week. She's a good girl. I won't let that name ruin my roast chicken. Candace laughed softly, winked. "Nothing could ruin your chicken." Then she tilted her head, mischief flickering just as it had when she was 17. "Do you still have the box?" I knew what she meant. The shoebox wrapped in old newsprint, tied with a coarse string, the place where I had kept everything from before. "Yes," I said quietly. "Up in the attic, next to Mom's scarves." Later that evening, after Candace left, I climbed to the attic. The air smelled of dry wood and aged insulation. My hand found the rough string. The shoebox weighed heavily, memory given shape. "Not today," I whispered, placing it back, closing the closet door. Yet its presence lingered, as if an uninvited guest had entered the house for good. Outside, the Portland rain thinned, and a sliver of light pushed through the clouds like someone had nudged open a gray curtain. I brewed chamomile tea, its warmth trailing down the hallway. The wedding invitation lay half open on the shelf, like a small door. I looked at the name Harrison once more, then shut it as gently as closing a book. Not because I was afraid to read further, but because I wanted silence to hold until the night of the roast chicken. Some truths are best spoken only after the scent of crisp skin and cinnamon apples has softened the hard edges inside us. Saturday afternoon, Emily came by with a bag of freshly roasted coffee beans from a little shop in the Pearl District, along with a pale bouquet of lavender. "I saw these at the farmer's market and thought you might like them," she said, placing the flowers in my hands, her voice brimming with delight as though she had stumbled upon a rare bargain. I smiled and set them in the old glass vase Tom once brought home from a garage sale. Soon, the kitchen air carried the gentle scent of lavender, softening the damp chill of Portland's drizzle. Emily moved with quick, lively steps, her blonde hair tied loosely at the back, her blue eyes always glinting whenever she spoke of wedding details, table linens, cake designs, the guest list. I listened and nodded while pushing down the slight ache that surfaced each time the name Harrison echoed through my mind like a song stuck on repeat. "Can I help with anything, Mom?" Emily asked when she saw me wrestling with chairs, pulling down some old boxes from the attic. I almost declined, but then I remembered my back wasn't as nimble as it once was. So I nodded. "Just a few boxes. Your Aunt Candace said I should clear some space before the dinner with your parents." Emily eagerly followed me upstairs, into the attic that was lit only by a narrow window slit, dust thick on every beam. I pulled out a box of my mother's knitted scarves, then another of old dishes, setting each down on the floor. Emily laughed, brushing off the dust like she'd found little treasures. Then her hand slipped into the corner and tugged out a shoebox wrapped in yellowed newspaper, its twine frayed but neatly tied. I froze, my heart pounding like someone had pressed play on an old film reel. "Oh, this looks vintage," Emily said, turning the box over in her hands, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Can I open it?" "Don't," I blurted, quicker than I intended, then breathed. "I mean, not necessary. Just old keepsakes." Emily paused, searching my face as if she might find the truth behind my eyes. Then she smiled, placed the box back. I understand. Some things are meant to be kept private. I nodded, grateful for her tact. But as she bent to stack scarves, a slip of paper slid out from the box's edge. The sheet was yellowed, its corners creased. Emily picked it up, reading aloud the slanted handwriting. For Maggie till the moon returns. I snatched it quicker than I thought myself capable, forcing a laugh. Just a high school note. Nothing important. Emily pressed her lips together, but in her eyes flickered something, curiosity, maybe even concern. She didn't say more, yet her silence felt weighty in that dust-choked attic. When we finished, we went downstairs and I brewed chamomile tea. Emily sat across from me, idly stroking the silver spoon. Mom, I know you don't like talking about the past, she began gently. But if there's anything connected to my parents, to the wedding, I hope you won't hesitate to share. Daniel and I want everything to go smoothly. The spoon tapped softly against her cup, ticking like a clock inside my chest. I smiled, steadying my voice. I understand. And I promise everything will be fine. You two focus on the wedding. Emily nodded, her smile returning, but I could still see the shadow of that old slip of paper reflected in her eyes. After she left, I climbed back up to the attic, my fingers again on the rough twine. Inside that shoebox were snapshots of a high school field, letters Rick had written from a roadside gas station after he left town, and vows spoken as though youth could make forever real. I sighed and shoved the box deeper into the corner. Still, I knew. The memory door had cracked open, and Emily had already glimpsed the light inside. When Portland grew still that night, I opened the small diary beneath my pillow and wrote a few lines. Not today, not this week, but soon you will know. The name Harrison has never been just a name. I closed the journal and switched off the lamp. Still, even in sleep, I could hear the rumble of that old pickup engine mingling with the rain, like an overture to a story that refused to end. Friday night I stood in the kitchen, the oven's heat warming my face, the scent of roast chicken mingling with cinnamon and apples drifting through the house. Candace, setting a vase of yellow chrysanthemums on the table, teased, Maggie, you're cooking like it's Thanksgiving. I shot her a look while tossing the tray of potatoes. Let's just call it that. It's been long since we've all sat down together. Emily arrived early, busy arranging silverware, her blonde hair catching bits of light. At the same time, Daniel strung up the fairy lights on the porch. I watched him, pride swelling alongside a heavy weight in my chest. The doorbell rang. My heart jumped. Emily ran ahead. They're here. I wiped my hands on my apron, straightened, and breathed as though stepping onto a stage. And then I saw him. Rick. His hair had gone gray, but his stance was the same. Those gray eyes still so familiar they pulled me back to an Illinois football field one late afternoon. Beside him stood his wife, Linda, graceful, kind-faced. Maggie, he said softly, as if testing my name on his tongue. I nodded, smiling politely on my lips, though my hands trembled. Welcome. Please come in. Emily chattered happily, showing her mother around the kitchen decor. Daniel shook Rick's hand, laughter spilling out, while I fixed my gaze on the roast chicken, as if watching the skin crisp was my lifeline. Dinner began. Candace told a story about a new bakery. Daniel spoke about house hunting after the wedding. Emily described bridesmaids' dresses. I spooned potatoes, poured wine, everything flowing as neatly as a picture-perfect family portrait. Yet underneath it all, I felt the taut wire stretched across the table between Rick and me. Each time his eyes brushed mine, I dropped my gaze, busying myself with a napkin, a glass. Linda asked about my teaching years. I smiled, recounting mischievous students, while Rick stayed silent, listening. Candace, ever perceptive, cast me glances, her lips pressed tight. When Emily suggested, "Why don't you all share how you first met?" My throat nearly closed. "We met at a friend's birthday party," Linda said brightly, smiling at Rick. He was so clumsy he spilled a drink all over my dress. Laughter erupted around the table. I laughed too, but there was a bitterness threading through the sound. Rick's eyes flickered toward me, then dropped. His hand gripped his glass so hard the knuckles turned white. After dessert, Emily led everyone into the living room. Daniel put on soft jazz and Candace carried out the apple pie. I lingered in the kitchen, stacking dishes when Rick walked in alone, setting his glass in the sink. In that moment there was no laughter, no cutlery clatter, only the dishwasher's hum and the lingering scent of cinnamon. "Maggie," he said, his voice rougher than before. "I never imagined we'd meet again like this." I turned, dish towel still in hand. "Life has a way of playing tricks, Rick." He looked at me, eyes filled with decades of absence. "I wrote to you, but I suppose you never got the letters." My grip tightened on the towel. In my mind the shoebox appeared, the letters unanswered, unexplained. Before I could respond, Candace called from the other room. "Maggie, need a hand?" I drew in a breath and lowered my voice to him. "Not now." Then I stepped back into the living room, my hands still damp. The evening went on, children's laughter filling the air, but I knew well enough. A silence had opened and it would not close again. That night, after everyone had gone, the house sank back into silence, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock and the lingering scent of apples and cinnamon. I cleared the plates, my chest heavy as stone, then dropped onto the sofa where Candace stretched out, feet on the coffee table, a glass of wine twirling in her hand. She looked at me with an expression halfway between teasing and sympathy, her voice low enough not to disturb the hush. "How long are you planning to keep pretending, Maggie?" I tried for a steady tone, though I could hear my tremor. "So you know everything, don't you?" Candace shrugged, sipped her wine, the streetlight outside brushing across her face. "I know that the man who sat at our family table tonight was Rick, the first love you never fully admitted, and the tension between you two was so thick anyone could feel it." "Yes, I know. And I know more than that." My heart lurched, anger rising hot in my chest. "What do you mean?" Candace met my eyes, her voice deliberate, measured. "Rick didn't leave you the way you think he did. He wrote you a letter, Maggie. A long one. You never read it because Mom hid it from you." I froze, my head buzzing. A lifetime built on a single story suddenly cracking apart. "Mom? Why would she?" Candace set her glass down, tracing the wood grain with her finger before she went on. "I was 14. I found the letter in Rick's handwriting in Mom's drawer, postmarked Illinois. Mom said he had asked you to come with him when he got that scholarship out of state and promised he'd come back. But she feared you'd give up school and chase after some wandering dream. So she put the letter away and told you he was gone for good." Tears stung my eyes, the room spinning around me. All those nights I cried, believing I'd been abandoned. All those years I kept the door of memory shut, built on a lie. My voice cracked. "You knew all this time and never said a word?" Candace leaned closer, clasping my hand, her eyes full of regret. "Too long, Maggie. I wanted to tell you many times, but then you met Tom, married and had Daniel. I thought digging up the past would only bring pain. Tom loved you deeply and you did have happiness. So I stayed silent." I pulled away, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Do you understand I've lived my whole life inside a misunderstanding? Do you understand the hollow in me that never closed?" Candace's voice broke. "I know. And I'm sorry. But now Rick is here. The past has returned. You have the chance to face it, to forgive him, to forgive Mom, and to forgive yourself." I pressed my palms to my temples, then collapsed back into the chair, rain tapping steadily on the roof as if underscoring her words. Memories rushed in. Rick on that summer field, sweat darkening his shirt, grinning as he handed me a cold Coke. Nights by the riverbank, dreaming of freedom on the open highway, Route 66, towns with no names, and the day he disappeared, leaving me with an empty heart. Now, all those images blurred with the truth, that he had written and hadn't abandoned me. My voice broke as I turned to Candace. "But Daniel, my son is about to marry his daughter. If the truth comes out, what happens to them?" Candace poured herself more wine, her tone softening. "That's your decision. I can't make it for you. You could tell, but the wedding might collapse and the children could be hurt. Or you could stay silent. Let the past remain between you and Rick. But Maggie, silence can destroy too." I leaned back, tears spilling, staring at the dark ceiling as though waiting for an answer to drop from above. Rick's laughter echoed long ago in my heart, twining with Tom's gentle voice the day he proposed beneath the autumn maple. I felt trapped between two lives, the one I had lived and never got to. Candace sighed, resting her head back. "You've always been strong, Maggie. But this time you can't hide forever. The truth is already out of the box. The light keeps seeping through even if you shove it back into the dark." Hugging the sofa cushion tight, I whispered, I wish I'd known sooner, maybe everything would have been different. Candace clasped my hand again, murmuring, "Don't live with what ifs, Maggie. You still have a chance to rewrite part of your story." I closed my eyes, letting the tears run freely, and in my ears the Portland rain played on, like an old refrain marking time for all the words unsaid these 40 years that were finally breaking free. The night before the wedding, the little restaurant in downtown Portland glowed with golden light. White roses stretched along the tables, glasses clinked, and laughter rose like an overture to tomorrow's joy. Half formal in his suit, Daniel hurried back and forth, fussing over arrangements, while Emily, radiant as a princess, her blonde curls shining under the lights, floated through the room. I sat at the end of the table, hands wrapped around a champagne flute, my heart heavy with the knowledge that tonight might be my last chance to speak the truth, or to bury it forever. Rick entered with Linda at his side. He bowed politely, his eyes grazing mine instantly, and my heart cinched tight. Beside me, Candace nudged my elbow, whispering, "If you're going to tell, now's the time." I masked the tremor with a faint smile and a sip of wine. The dinner began, blessings circling the table. Daniel stood to thank his parents and everyone present. Emily spoke a few sweet words. Rick raised a glass to the young couple, his voice still steady and warm. Linda shared a childhood story of Emily's, drawing laughter from all around. And then Emily took my hand, her eyes shining. "Mom, will you say something too?" My legs resisted as I rose, every gaze fixed on me, my pulse pounding like a drum. In my mind flashed the lost letter, the summer afternoons on the football field, the glance Rick gave me just last night in the kitchen. I lifted my glass, my voice unsteady. "Daniel, my son, I'm prouder of you than anything in my life. And Emily, I know you'll be a wonderful partner for him." I paused, on the edge of confessing that Rick was once my first love, that 40 years had been built on a misunderstanding. But then I saw Daniel and Emily's hands clasped tight beneath the table, their happiness burning bright. I veered away. "Nothing matters more than watching you two find each other. I believe your love will be strong enough to weather anything." Applause broke out. Daniel kissed my cheek. Emily hugged me close, whispering, "I love you, Mom." I forced a smile, my heart still trembling, and sat down under Candace's gaze, half regret, half relief. The dinner continued with jazz and stories, but none reached me. I only felt the champagne drain and the ache of courage left unused. Afterwards, when the guests had all trickled away, I lingered in the dimmed room, staff clearing glasses, only a few golden lamps burning low. I stepped into the hotel corridor where a wide window overlooked the street. Emily stood alone, her pale blue dress draping softly, turning when she heard me. "Mom, everyone's gone. I'm just waiting for Daniel to bring the car." I nodded, moved closer, drew in a long breath as a war raged inside me, to lock the secret away or let it out. My hand settled on her shoulder. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. Something I couldn't say in front of everyone." She tilted her head, her bright eyes shadowed by worry. Slowly I began. "Long ago, before you were born, your father Rick and we loved each other." Emily froze, lips parted. I went on. "There were misunderstandings, letters that never reached me, and so we lost each other. Life led me to your father, Tom, a wonderful man who gave me a family, who gave me Daniel. But seeing you and my son together, I knew you deserved to know. Because this doesn't change your happiness. I want you to understand that love isn't always smooth, that sometimes we adults make mistakes. But that doesn't make your love any less beautiful." Tears welled and fell. I brushed them away, but Emily was already holding me, her jasmine perfume wrapping close. "Mom," she whispered, "thank you for telling me. It doesn't change the way I feel about Daniel, not one bit. If anything, I cherish it more, because you've known loss, you understand how precious happiness is." I nodded, trembling in her embrace, feeling a weight of 40 years lift at last. Emily smiled, touching my cheek. "Don't worry. Tomorrow will be perfect." Just then, Daniel appeared, jacket in hand, surprised. "What's going on?" Emily glanced at me, then shook her head with a smile. "Nothing, just talking with Mom." And I knew she had chosen to keep the secret between us. Watching them walk away hand in hand, I stayed at the window, Portland's soft rain falling on the street below. My heart pulled tight yet lighter too. Because at last, the truth had found a breath, not shouted over the noise of a party, but cradled in the trust of the daughter who would soon marry into the family of the man who had once been my first love. The morning of the wedding I woke earlier than usual, the Portland light slipping through the thin hotel curtains, painting the room in pale gold. My heart beat so fast it felt like I were the bride instead of Emily. I stood before the mirror, hands trembling as I fastened the pearl necklace Tom had given me 30 years ago, a lump rising in my throat. Candace knocked and came in, carrying a cup of hot coffee, smiling with her usual teasing warmth. "Ready for this, Maggie? Today we officially gain in-laws." I sighed, offering a faint smile. "Can you believe it? I still feel the same nerves as when I dropped Daniel off for his first day of kindergarten." Candace slipped an arm around my shoulders, her gaze gentle. "All you need to do this time is let go, Maggie." The little church on the edge of town was dressed in white roses, baby's breath and glowing candles, the organ notes rolling warm through the air. Guests filled the pews, the atmosphere both solemn and expectant. I straightened Daniel's tie in the preparation room, whispering, "Do you know how much you look like your father, Tom?" Steady, calm, but your eyes shine like his when he looked at me on our wedding day. Daniel pulled me into a hug, eyes shimmering. "Mom, I just hope I make him proud." I bit my lip to keep from crying. Rick entered then, guiding Emily, and for one suspended heartbeat, both of them looked at me. A silence passed, unnameable, fleeting, before it broke when Emily exclaimed, "Mom, you look beautiful today." I smiled back. "So do you, Emily." The ceremony began. Music rose as Emily, radiant in her white gown, strolled down the aisle strewn with petals, Rick at her side, his face glowing and taut with emotion. Watching them, my chest tightened then softened. I felt a sense of reconciliation, as though past and present had agreed to stand together. When the minister spoke, when Daniel and Emily said their vows, all the quiet tensions of these past weeks dissolved. It no longer mattered who Rick had once been to me, nor the lost letters. The only thing that mattered was the two gazing at each other with unshakable trust. I heard Daniel promise, "I'll stand by you in every summer and every winter, in every sun and every rain." Tears bright in her eyes, Emily answered, "I'll never let your hand slip from mine." The church fell into stillness, then burst into applause. Candace slipped me a tissue, whispering, "See? Love can always begin again. It doesn't matter what the past held." When Daniel kissed Emily beneath the floral arch, I caught Rick's eyes across the room. They were blurred with tears, but within them was a quiet acknowledgement, as if to say, "We did the right thing." I gave a slight nod. The ache and bitterness fell away for the first time in decades, leaving only peace. The celebration spilled into the vast reception hall, laughter and music carrying long into the day, and for once my heart was light enough to join. The last dance of the wedding came when the lights in the hall had softened, the candles on the tables burned low, and only a few groups of guests lingered with quiet laughter before leaving. The live band shifted into gentle ballads. After Daniel and Emily finished their opening dance, the floor filled with guests, joy rippling through the room. I sat watching the young couple, a feeling rising in me that was at once complete and dreamlike. Candace leaned close, whispering, "See? Everything found its way after all." I nodded, my eyes fixed on my son and his new wife, their smiles easing the weight in my chest. When the MC announced the final parent dance, I stood, taking Daniel's hand as we stepped onto the floor. Rick offered his arm to Emily. The music swelled, a slow country ballad about love and time. Daniel held me gently, whispering, "Mom, today is the best day of my life." I smiled through tears. "And I feel the same, my son." We turned in a circle, and when I looked up, I saw Rick and Emily just a few steps away. As the song ended, Daniel released me to Rick, not planned, not spoken, but a small gesture born of the moment. Rick and I stood side by side, applause echoing as the crowd stepped back to give the young couple space. We stayed still, quiet under the golden lights. His voice was low. "Maggie, I never thought I'd stand beside you on a day like this." My smile trembled. Rick, 40 years ago, I couldn't have imagined it either. But seeing our children so happy today, I think maybe everything had a reason. His gaze softened, no longer holding regret or sorrow, only acceptance. We watched Daniel and Emily, their hands locked and their faces lit with joy. Rick exhaled. "I was wrong to let misunderstanding come between us. I lost you." But seeing Emily this happy, I know at least a piece of that love carried on through them. I bit my lip, tears spilling, but they were not bitter. They were released. We don't need to go back, Rick. We lived, we loved, we lost. And now it's time to watch our children go forward free of shadows. He nodded, his smile faint but genuine. I laid my hand lightly on his arm, a small gesture, but enough to close the unfinished chapter. The song ended, the lights brightened, applause swelled. We let go and melted into laughter, cheers, and noise. No one knew that in that moment, an old love had been quietly laid to rest. I slipped onto the balcony for air, the Portland night carrying lavender and a trace of rain. Candace found me, draped an arm around my shoulders and murmured, "You did the right thing, Maggie. You chose love over regret." I smiled, lighter than I had felt in years. Through the hall's wide window, I saw Daniel and Emily spinning in each other's arms under the lights, and Rick beside Linda, holding a glass of wine, his glance brushing me only for a breath. Not longing anymore, just a silent farewell. I dipped my head in reply, and in that moment I knew, the last dance had not been for an old love. It had been for me. For the woman who had finally learned to let go, so that love could bloom anew in the lives ahead. The day after the wedding, when the celebration had faded and the hotel room returned to its quiet, I opened the old leather notebook Tom once bought me from a bit of a bookshop downtown. I sat by the window, Portland's morning light spilling through the white curtain, a cup of coffee still steaming on the table. My hand trembled slightly as I held the pen. My eyes were swollen from crying the night before. I wrote, June 17th. Daniel is married. Emily has become my second daughter. I paused, reflected, then continued. 40 years, a lifetime of love and loss, silence and waiting. Last night I stood beside Rick and felt no anger, only the sense of growing old alongside a softened memory. I used to believe some truths had to be spoken to set me free. But sometimes it turns out silence and letting go is how love survives, taking a different shape in a different generation. I stopped, drew in a long breath, then wrote the final lines. Happiness is not in holding the past, but in daring to watch your children carry it forward, shining in a new light. My life has seen enough storms. As I watch Daniel and Emily walk hand in hand, I understand that love never dies when it is real. It only changes places from one heart to another and blooms again. I closed the notebook and set it on the table, and in that moment my heart felt at peace in a way it never had before. When I chose to tell this story, I was drawn in by something so ordinary, so real. The way the past sometimes refuses to disappear, only to return at the moment we least expect, like in a wedding. Each of us carries something left unsaid, a wound never quite healed. This story reminded me that true happiness isn't found in winning or losing against the past. Still, we need to know how to let go so the people we love can find peace. What stayed with me most was how the mother, the central figure, chose silence to protect her son and his bride. She didn't need to expose the truth to feel lighter, because sometimes silence is an act of courage, a mature form of love. And from that, I learned that every generation has the right to build happiness, without carrying the burdens of those who came before. What about you? If you were in Maggie's place, facing your past in the middle of your child's most important day, would you speak out? Or would you keep silent? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. If this story gave you something to reflect on, please support me by leaving a like, sharing your thoughts, and subscribing to the channel. Every bit of your interaction encourages me to keep sharing these everyday stories that might make you laugh, shed a tear, or catch a glimpse of yourself in them.